Episode 1, 1953 to 1954. The dream shows up before the muscles. Welcome back to Chrome and Gasoline. I'm Alex, and today we're talking about the 1953 to 1962 Chevrolet Corvette, the original C1, the car that showed up wearing a tuxedo while still figuring out how to tie its own shoes. Picture early 1950s America. Big cars, soft seats, steering wheels the size of satellite dishes, and engines that feel like they're politely asking permission to accelerate. Then Chevrolet looks across the ocean, sees those nimble European sports cars, and says, "Sure, we can do that." That's how you get the first Corvette, low, sleek, and confident enough to walk into a room like it owns the place. Here's the fun part. The early Corvette is basically a movie star with a day job. The body is fiberglass, which was a bold move back then. Light, rust-resistant, and futuristic. Also, it was new enough that everyone involved was learning in real time. Early fiberglass had its quirks, and owners learned to love the car the way you love an eccentric relative who brings a different casserole every year and refuses to label it. Now, we get to my recurring segment, Corvette confidence versus reality check. Confidence, it looks fast while sitting still. Reality check. The earliest cars leaned on an inline six, often called the Blue Flame. Smooth, dependable, and totally fine. If your idea of a sport is competitive lawn watering, it wasn't a bad engine. It just wasn't the thunder you expected when the styling promised fireworks. And then there's the transmission story. Early on, many were paired with a Powerglide automatic. Again, not evil, just not exactly the stuff of heroic heel and toe legend. Powerglide is the kind of gearbox that says, "Relax, I got this," and then proceeds to take its sweet time getting there. If you've ever tried to hurry someone who's already walking with purpose, you know the vibe. But I'm not here to dunk on it. I'm here to explain why it matters. The early Corvette is a proof of concept you could actually buy. It's Chevrolet putting a toe in the sports car pool and discovering the water is cold, deep, and full of opinions. And yet, it worked. People stared. People wanted one. People believed the promise. And that's the magic of the 1953 to 1954 Corvette. It's the moment America decided it wanted a two-seat fantasy car, even if the fantasy was still buffering. Episode 2, 1955 to 1956. The Corvette gets a pulse. You're listening to Chrome and Gasoline. I'm Alex, and this is where the Corvette stops being a stylish experiment and starts becoming a proper troublemaker. The kind that smiles while doing it. The mid-1950s is the turning point because Chevrolet gives the Corvette what everyone secretly wanted from day one, a V8. Not a complicated speech, not a committee meeting, not a "we'll circle back." Just a small block V8 that changes the car's whole personality. Suddenly, the Corvette isn't merely posing for photos, it's actually backing up the attitude. This is also where the Corvette confidence versus reality check gag starts flipping. Early on, the car's confidence was doing most of the heavy lifting. Now the reality starts catching up. You press the pedal, and the car responds like it's been waiting years to exhale. Transmission-wise, this era is when you see the Corvette offering more of what sporty drivers ask for. Automatics still existed for people who wanted ease, but manuals became part of the conversation in a real way. And that matters because a manual gearbox changes the whole relationship. An automatic is a nice dinner date. A manual is you cooking together in the same kitchen, arguing about seasoning, then eating it anyway. The early V8 and manual combination is basically the Corvette's first real handshake with the enthusiast crowd. It's not saying, "I'm perfect," it's saying, "I'm serious now." And that's a huge difference. Let's talk colors, because the 1950s were not shy. The Corvette started showing up in classic combinations that looked like they belonged outside a diner with neon glowing in the window. You've got bright whites, intense reds, and other lively period shades that make the car feel optimistic, as if it's convinced tomorrow will be sunny, even if today is a little cloudy. Pair that with contrasting interiors, and suddenly the Corvette isn't just transportation, it's a rolling mood. By 1956, styling tweaks helped too. The car looks more finished, less like a beautiful sketch and more like a confident final draft. And that's the best way to describe this chapter. The Corvette is no longer auditioning. It got the role. Episode 3, 1957 to 1960. Carburetors, bragging rights, and space-age vibes. Welcome to Chrome and Gasoline. I'm Alex, and now we're in the late 1950s, part of the C1 story, where the Corvette starts acting like it knows your buddy's Mustang is parked nearby, and it wants to start something politely. This is the era of horsepower arms races and driveway debates. People didn't argue online yet. They argued, leaning over fenders, holding a soda, pointing at engines as if they were explaining rocket science. And in a way, they were. The Corvette is right in the middle of that culture. Let's start with the engine vibe. The small block V8 becomes the heartbeat of the Corvette identity. You're seeing more performance flavors, more tuning talk, and a lot of attention paid to induction, carburetors, and what your engine likes. In this period, people treat carburetors like emotional support animals. This one's temperamental. That one's a sweetheart. Mine only runs right if I compliment it. And then, because the late 1950s loved futuristic ideas, you get fuel injection appearing as an option on some Corvettes. The important thing isn't memorizing numbers. The important thing is what it represented: sharper response, more space-age engineering, and a lot of bragging rights at the gas station. Fuel injection was the kind of phrase you could say slowly to make your neighbor blink twice. Transmission choices also keep evolving. Manuals become more serious, more enthusiast-friendly, and the driving experience starts to feel less like nice cruiser and more like lightweight brawler in a tailored suit. Automatics still have their place, but if you wanted the full sports car handshake, the manual was the way to feel it. Now for colors. This is where the Corvette really leans into being a rolling poster. Bright paint, bold interiors, and combinations that look fast even when the car is parked and the driver is inside ordering pie. Think classic whites, vivid reds, dark tones that make the chrome pop, and those period hues that scream late 50s optimism without ever asking permission. Corvette confidence versus reality check returns here with a twist. Confidence. The Corvette looks like it should come with its own theme song. Reality check. It's still a machine from an era where you might coax it a little on cold mornings. But the gap between confidence and reality is getting smaller. By the end of the 1950s, the Corvette wasn't pretending anymore. It's legitimately quick, legitimately cool, and legitimately a problem for anyone who thought it was just a pretty face. Episode 4, 1961 to 1962, the C1's final form. This is Chrome and Gasoline, and I'm Alex. Let's talk about 1961 and 1962, the late C1 years, where the Corvette looks like it hit the gym, got a better haircut, and stopped apologizing for taking up space. Styling-wise, the early 1960s C1 is iconic. The rear design in particular becomes cleaner and more assertive, and the whole car feels more mature. It still has that classic C1 friendliness, but now there's a sharper edge. It's the difference between a grin and a smirk. Under the hood, this is where the Corvette's performance story feels fully grown. By 1962, Chevrolet introduced the 327 V8, and that's a big moment in Corvette history. What matters is the character, strong performance potential, rev-happy energy compared to earlier setups, and a sense that Chevrolet is no longer chasing the sports car idea, it's building it. Now, let's do the transmission comparison in human language. An automatic in this era can make the car feel like a stylish cruiser that looks like it could win a race. A manual makes it feel like an athlete. The shifter, the clutch, the way the car talks back through the controls, it turns every drive into a conversation. Sometimes it's a pleasant conversation. Sometimes it's the car saying, "You sure about that?" when you get lazy with your timing. Colors in the early 60s kept the Corvette in full poster mode. You still see those classic reds, whites, dark tones, and other period shades that make chrome sparkle like jewelry. Here's my favorite joke. Specific colors add at least 20 horsepower while parked. I can't prove it with a dyno sheet, but I can prove it by watching people walk faster toward the car. And you can feel the end approaching, not in a sad way, but in a final season of a great show way. Chevrolet is about to change the Corvette's shape and story with the next generation. But the late C1 leaves on a high note, better sorted, more confident, more capable, and still packed with that original American optimism that says, yes, we can build our own sports car, and yes, we can make it dramatic. Next episode, I'll tell you a personal Corvette story, because a car like this doesn't just live in garages, it lives in people's memories. Episode 5, Alex's personal anecdote, the Corvette that rewired my brain. Welcome back to Chrome and Gasoline. I'm Alex, and I owe you a story about the 1953 to 1962 Corvette era, because this isn't just history for me. This is the stuff that crawls into your head and rearranges the furniture. Years ago, I ended up at a small local car show that didn't have fancy ropes or security guards. It had folding chairs, sun-faded banners, and precisely one guy selling lemonade like it was a controlled substance. The kind of show where you can actually talk to owners, which is dangerous because owners of classic Corvettes will casually say something like, "Want to sit in it?" The way a magician asks if you want to see a card trick. That's how I met a man with a 1962 Corvette, finished in a color that made the chrome look extra alive. Not screaming bright, not boring dark, just perfectly period, as it belonged in a glossy brochure next to a smiling couple pretending they don't have bills. The interior smelled like old vinyl, warm fiberglass, and a faint hint of gasoline that felt less like a hazard and more like a perfume called Poor Decisions. He started talking about engines, and I realized something. When people say 327, they don't just mean displacement. They tell an era where machines felt honest. Throttle response wasn't filtered through 10 computers and a committee. It was a direct line from your foot to the engine's mood. You didn't just drive it, you negotiated with it. Then he offered a short ride. And no, I'm not going to turn this into a Hollywood chase scene. We didn't outrun helicopters. We didn't jump off a bridge. We did something far more powerful. We rolled down a regular street at regular speeds, and I still felt my brain light up like a pinball machine. The manual transmission was the main character. The shifter had that old-school mechanical feel. Not slick, not vague, just real. Each gear change felt like clicking a well-made tool into place. And the engine note wasn't obnoxious. It was confident, like it didn't need to shout because it already knew. Here's the funniest part. Before that ride, I thought I understood early Corvettes. I had opinions, I had facts. I had the whole Corvette confidence versus reality check routine ready to go. After that ride, the reality check landed on me. The confidence wasn't just styling, it was an intention. Even the quirks felt like personality, not problems. When we got back, he shut it off, and the car made those little ticking sounds as it cooled down, like it was decompressing after telling a good story. I thanked him, tried to play it cool, and absolutely failed. Because that's what the C1 Corvette does. It takes something that could have been a simple car and turns it into a memory with an engine. That's it for this run on the 1953 to 1962 Corvette. From fiberglass dreams and automatic cruising to real V8 swagger and early 60s polish, it's a chapter that helped define what an American sports car could be. I'm Alex, and this has been Chrome and Gasoline. If you've got a Corvette story, you already know. It never really ends. It just idles in the back of your mind, waiting for the next green light.